Alright, I just turned my AC unit off for the second time because now I want to record all of that again. Hey there, sorry, I was just playing the absolute greatest video game of all fucking time. Holy shit! Now, before I even begin to talk about Celeste, I need to provide some context to my own experience and discovery of the game. All around, single-player games have never really had a stable place in my life, and they've really never been able to hold my attention for too long. The three games I can remember completing, save Celeste, are Super Mario Odyssey, Ocarina of Time, and Pokemon White. Oh, and Wall-E for the PC. I beat that in one day while I was sick home from school in the 3rd grade. Can't forget that one. All of these games I played religiously and finished in very short periods of time, never spanning longer than a month. I've never really had the patience or attention to play most single-player titles all the way through, and because of this, I've become very accustomed to usually just engaging myself with competitive multiplayer games. League, CSGO, Valorant. These games have piqued my interest for the longest time because you never finish them. Competition hooks you in, and whether it's wave management, team fighting, spray control, map awareness, crosshair placement, economy management, Tayden coming to your house and unplugging your desktop in the middle of a ranked match. These games throw so much information at you that you never beat the game. You just continue to master it in finer and finer detail. However, this feeling hasn't always given way to positive experience, and to be honest, recently it's been giving way to a lot of negative experience. When you focus on efficiency and performance so precisely and with such an intensity, it becomes incredibly easy to lose sight of the reasons you picked up the game in the first place, and to skew the role video games take in your life altogether. Time and time again, I found myself angry and frustrated, not enjoying my time to any extent while sitting and playing these extremely competitive games with friends and wondering to myself, why am I doing this? Why am I playing this game? This questioning in part is what led me to dive a bit deeper into the single player experience, and what led me to the game Celeste. I've heard very good things about this game from multiple sources, the primary one being Donkey of course, and so I picked it up with high expectations, and for the reasons that I'm about to unfold, it easily exceeded them. All the greatest video games, and platformers especially, have one thing in common. They all have an incredible way of teaching you how to play the game and how the game's mechanics work. Let's take Dark Souls for instance. Even being revered as one of the most difficult video games to date, it still doesn't just throw you into a boss fight first thing. Actually, it kinda does. But in the leading up to said fight, you learn all the mechanics and learn how the game will play out. I won't go too in-depth about this one because I'm currently playing through Dark Souls Remastered, and there are a lot of things about Dark Souls that I love and that I would love to talk about, so I'll save all those for another video or 2 or 10. But the point that I'm trying to get across is that the Dark Souls series teaches you how to play the game. Celeste does the same thing. The game has a great introduction sequence which teaches you all the basic forms of movement, and although your primary movement is confined to just jumping, climbing, and dashing, each of the main story's 7 areas has some gimmick to add. These gimmicks vary in just how game-changing they are, but they all add a goldmine of potential additional content, and the developers were obviously very aware and very skilled at utilizing this. Another key to a successful platformer is handling difficulty. Celeste approaches this by dividing each area into zones, as I'll refer to them. Your screen is always confined to one zone at a time, and most zones usually aren't bigger than the size of your screen. If you die at any point, you respawn at wherever you entered that zone. This allows the player to really hone specific styles of movement or gimmicks in small zones, and then really put all their skills to the test in the larger zones later on, all while keeping the game difficult and never frustrating the player with how punishing death is. My only gripe with the game and its main story is that there's never a point where all the gimmicks are added together in an epic gauntlet to test all your skills. There are things called B-side tapes and C-side tapes which are much harder versions of the levels which test your skills even further with those given mechanics, but once again there's never ever a time that all the mechanics are implemented together. And if I had to name something, that is the only thing missing from this game. A common assessment of music and sound design in all forms of entertainment that I've been told is that if the sound design is done how it's supposed to be, the audience won't even notice or think about it. While this is a good rule of thumb, I think that the greatest sound designers and composers find a way to inject themselves into whatever project they're working for, purely enriching and expanding upon the core experience. Celeste once again proves to be a phenomenal example of this. Each area has its own dynamic music, always holding a consistent tone and central idea, but shifting and morphing with the changes the player experiences as they play. An excellent example of this is the second chapter, Old Site. Initially, these space blocks serve no purpose other than normal platforms to walk and climb on, just like any other. But Madeline's part of her escapes from a mirror, causing all the space blocks to morph into new avenues of traversal throughout the level. And the music perfectly reflects this. Just as the player now has more methods of movement in their kit, the music reflects this with more movement in the form of new instruments and melodies. I find this form of adaptive composition absolutely fascinating, and it's exclusive to interactive art forms like video games, which makes it all the more exciting to see. And Celeste is full of this. Even though I think the music is deserving of the highest praise amongst individual art forms in this game, there's still a lot to be said about the visual art direction. The pixelated terrain and sprite work, the low poly map design, and the hand-drawn scenes in between chapters make the game come to life. Even the map's hidden levels, the B-side and C-side tapes, are represented in this retro style by literal cassette tapes. All the aspects of the visual art in this game come together to create an incredible atmosphere that I think is seldom rivaled in other games, especially ones from smaller dev teams like Celeste's. I'm gonna do my best not to spoil anything here, but if you plan on playing the game, I would recommend going and doing that before finishing this video. The story is one centered around Madeline's struggles. The struggles with herself manifest in the part of her struggles with life in general she discusses with Theo, another hiker on the mountain who struggles himself with social media and how he's perceived by others. And the game itself wouldn't exist without the struggle that is climbing Mount Celeste. Just a quick disclaimer and warning, I guess. I am going to be speaking about mental health and mental illness here, but I would like to emphasize that I am nowhere near an expert on this topic, and I only have my own experience and the experiences of those around me to base my assessment off of. So, the things that I say here are derived from my own interpretation of the game and how it coincides with the struggles that I face. I would hope that this would be implied, but this is the internet, where adults with a reading score of a 3rd grader and the mind of a snail can and will attempt to critique you, so I'd rather have my bases covered, especially around sensitive topics like this. The core to each of the primary struggles throughout the story is mental health. Madeline sees this part of her as a manifestation of all the negative feelings she carries, and as such, feels she needs to leave it behind. This is very indicative of feelings of self-doubt which can be brought on by anxiety and overthinking. These feelings are ones many will shy away from and try to forget, as they can be incredibly painful and, in some cases, even dangerous to confront. But Celeste crafts an incredible story that fuses beautifully with the gameplay to express that these feelings and struggles cannot be escaped if we hope to achieve our goals. That running and hiding will only in turn make these struggles manifest and become even larger and more painful to deal with. It instead expresses that we must confront these hardships and accept that they are a part of who we are. That, in essence, they are a part of us. Another high point of this game's narrative is Mr. Oshiro, the phantom hotel manager who encapsulates feelings of overthinking and social anxiety to a T. To help extrapolate upon this, I'd like to paraphrase a quote from a discussion I had the other day with my good friend Gige on this very topic. It feels like there's a barrier when I'm talking to many people. That others are so concerned with how others perceive them that they become caught up in the heads of those that they're speaking to, instead of concerning themselves with ensuring that what they say and express is what they mean and feel. It's very difficult because once I realize someone's struggling with my thoughts, I start to be concerned with theirs, and then the conversation becomes nothing but filler chatter. Mr. Oshiro is so caught up with his hotel, so tangled in his thoughts that he's convinced himself he knows what Madeline wants, when in reality Madeline is telling him over and over that she just wants to move on and continue climbing the mountain. Mr. Oshiro's anxiety and overthinking manifests itself in this dark matter, a literal barrier which gets in the way of Madeline and her goals. I could continue to go on and on about the many feelings and struggle this story brings to life for myself, but I felt that these were the most prominent aspects for me, and I would love to hear from others how they experience the game and what it means to them without offering up only my opinions. Finally, Celeste is a video game which seems to just get everything right. Not only are each of these fundamental parts of the game incredible in their own right, they all fit together seamlessly. The music extrapolates upon the story and gameplay, adapting to the player's experience. Not only is the storytelling incredible in the way the game is laid out, with small pieces of information found throughout the level's beautiful scenes, but the gameplay and its difficulty gives you a struggle that gets harder and harder as Madeline's own conflicts become more and more present. Each part of the game grows with the next, and ultimately with you as the player, as you traverse this seemingly impossible task of reaching Mount Celeste's peak. And that is what I think great art is. Taking every piece of your medium and making them work off one another to result in a singular unit, in this case a video game, which brings to life its core theme when experienced. Celeste came at a time in my life that was very fitting. It expressed feelings and themes which helped me grapple with many of the challenges I currently face. While many may say things like, "It's just a video game, it can't be art," you have to realize that if you appreciate any traditional art forms such as painting, drawing, graphic design, music, composition, storytelling, acting, or many others, you have to accept that video games are art forms too. How good of a piece of art a video game is another matter, but for me, Celeste is one of the top of the list. If you have not played this game, please, I recommend that you pick it up. Whether you're looking for a beautiful game to experience, a challenging, unique platformer, a fulfilling story to be played out in a few hours, or any combination of these really, Celeste will be the game for you. Thank you for watching and for listening to me ramble about my experience with this game. I hope that you enjoyed, and I'll leave some links to videos in the description of other videos about Celeste that I really enjoyed watching and that definitely inspired this video. As I said before, I would love to hear others' thoughts on the game and its story, art, and music. So if you have something that you'd like to share that I didn't cover, please leave it in the comments below. I'd love to hear it. Until next time.